Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. I hope you can hear me okay. So as people continue to join, but this session is really packed and we have only 1 hour. So we shall start the session. So this session title is Side Talks and Bus Rides. How country exchanges can accelerate washing school. My name is Maya Igarashi-Wood from WaterAid UK. While waiting for others to join, for those who are already in the room, please put your name, organization, and also from which country you are joining from in the chat box. And also this session is in 2 languages. As many of you are perhaps already familiar, but at the bottom of the screen, there's a globe showing interpretation to choose either English or French. And then please click to say mute the original audio. Also, this is the first time that I see this option, but to see this presentation, this session in French, with the actual presentation slide in French. For that purpose, on top of your screen, it says view options, and then you can activate the presentation in French if you'd like to see the French presentation in French, or if you are in English audio, you can choose English presentation. Great. A few people are putting their name, organization, and then where they are joining. Excellent. Okay. Please keep putting your name, your organization, where you are joining from as a country. But perhaps we shall start the actual session now. Before starting, earlier I introduced myself briefly, but I will redo again. My name is Maya Igarashi-Wood. I am a senior WASH manager at the WaterAid UK. I'm based in the UK, not in London, just a few hours from London, in a little bit more countryside. And really great to be here. And I will be co-moderating this session with Belinda Abraham. Your camera is already on. I pass the mic to you if you want to introduce briefly yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Belinda here in Stockholm World Water Week, and it's a pleasure to have all of you join us, and hopefully more will join us. And perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. So she will be moderating later on the panel discussion. So without further ado, and even before we are teasing a little bit much, but first we'd like to briefly introduce ourselves in a way that this network called Washing School Network, which is hosting this session. This Washing School Network, we call it so-called WINS network, is a global interagency network which aims to harmonize efforts and then promote alignment and then knowledge exchange among development partners, NGOs, and the government where the Washing School Initiative is happening to improve, accelerate progress on washing school services in these countries. It was established in 2010, so 13 years ago as an informal network, and so it has expanded its membership. As of today, we have over 300 individual and organizational members. Myself, I'm representing WaterAid as a global washing school coordinator at the network core group, actively sharing our program experiences and the learnings, tools and approaches on the washing school, especially menstrual health and hygiene. And others in the core group members include UNICEF, GIZ, Save the Children, Joint Monitoring Programme, London School of Hygiene, Tropical Medicine, Emory University, and the UNESCO. And these core group members from which you would hear their experiences and learning today are also the same organization that work together and supported the conduct implementation of the Washington School International Learning Exchange, so-called ILE. So today's session is about really that chit-chat, side talks, and bus rides, as if you are having a casual chat with another participant sat next to you, or having coffee during the break of an ILE session, or on the bus ride to the school visit, which are really core and essential part of every ILE, the International Learning Exchange. And we shall start off with a keynote from Anne Thomas, Senior Advisor at UNICEF headquarters. Then we will show a brief video explaining what is ILE and what is the purpose of ILE to set the scene. Then moving on to that chit-chat experience, fast hearing from global monitoring perspective from Joint Monitoring Programme, then one of the main organizers of ILE in terms of effectiveness, relevance of such exchanges by UNICEF. Then moving on at the end to hear the ILE participant perspective from the government of Malawi. And please put your comments or questions in the chat box as we move one presenter to another. We won't have a time to answer questions after each presenter. However, we will pick those questions up at the panel discussion following the presentations. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Anne Thomas, Senior WASH Advisor at the UNICEF Children's Fund, United Nations Children's Fund at headquarters. Over to you, Anne.
Okay, thanks very much, Maya. Great to see you all here this morning, and good morning to everyone joining us online. I just wanted to say thank you to the Washington Schools Network, of which we're a part of as well, for pulling this session together. I know how hard it is to get all the speakers aligned and make sure these sessions come together smoothly. So hoping that this great program that Maya and the team have pulled together will keep everyone energized. Before we get into this packed program, I just wanted to offer a few reflections from our side. You'll be hearing about the AMP data, so I don't need to repeat that, but we have seen progress over the years, but there is still a lot of acceleration needed to reach the targets for drinking water in schools, a threefold increase in progress for basic sanitation, and a fivefold increase if we are to reach the target for hygiene in schools. But, you know, how do we do this? And from my perspective, there are three looming challenges for us as a subsector. The first is around looking at meeting the challenge of system strengthening. What does that mean for Washington schools? We have the challenges of institutional accountability, ensuring that Washington schools has a place in the policy environment. Also looking at things like financing, ensuring we have more financing for Washington schools, better data systems to drive progress in the sector. So these are really at a systems level, and I think we need really to be thinking about how we do this in a really deliberate and considered way. The second is around safety and sustainability of infrastructure and services that are being provided at school. Of course, this is intricately linked to the systems agenda. How do we make this work in tandem? And the final shift or challenge that we need to reach is responding to the climate challenge. So how is the sector responding to the climate challenge? So I think there's a lot of work going on in these three areas, but I think they frame nicely some of the challenges that we're all facing. And I wanted to mention UNICEF is working on something that we call the Washington Schools Accelerator Framework. It's a new strategy to be coming out with later this year, but it is really looking at addressing these interrelated challenges of a systems level approach, looking at sustainability and safety of systems that are implemented in schools, and then finally how we address climate resilience in schools. I think a really important driver of progress in the sector has been the knowledge management, knowledge exchange, the ability to catalyze new champions in the sector through the national country exchanges. And I think the ILE has been such an important vehicle for knowledge exchange over the years, over the last 10 decades in Asia. So really looking forward to hearing about findings from the report. But also we had the first annual first ILE in Africa this year, which had 21 governments and also shows how to promise to drive progress and learning and knowledge across the African continent. So great to hear how the experiences and findings from Asia are going to influence future events and the direction that we take for the international learning exchanges.
Yeah, perhaps with the time, we shall continue. Perhaps if she comes back after, we can try to get her back. So, yes, she really articulated the key elements around the perspective of system strengthening, and then asked quite key questions that we will probably address and then dig deeper throughout this session today. So while she might be coming back up, let's move on to the brief video about the ILE International Learning Exchange.
The last 10 years have seen major improvements on washing schools, or WINS, in many countries across the globe, and the pandemic has shown with shocking clarity the importance of WINS. In the year 2030, each and every school around the globe should provide access to basic drinking water, gender-segregated usable toilets, and hand-washing facility with water and soap. This sounds very basic, but is still not a reality. Committed to supporting ministries of education in leading and accelerating progress towards reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs for WINS, the GIZ Fit for School program in Asia and the regional UNICEF offices in Bangkok and Kathmandu joined forces and organized the annual WINS International Learning Exchange, or ILE, with support of the Global WINS Network. The ILE facilitates learning and generates momentum and political commitments towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals SDGs 4 and 6. Since 2012, 9 WINS ILE have been held in South and East Asia, and over 1,000 people participated, representing 25 national governments and various development partners, academic institutions, and the private sector. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the ILE had to transition into a virtual format. Positively, it enabled the ILE to continue as a platform for more WINS advocates to engage on WINS topics and include topics related to pandemic prevention and safe return to schools. With its focus on capacity development and sharing of implementation experiences and tools, the week-long ILE consists of technical sessions on relevant WINS topics, sharing innovations, improving monitoring tools, facilitation of country-to-country consultations learning exchange at regional and country level, and last but not least, field trips to schools. The ILE provides a platform for countries to showcase their achievements and best practice on WINS, as well as monitoring systems that help provide clear direction for attaining the 2030 SDGs. Technical experts on WINS are also engaged to share latest findings or present relevant and emerging topics such as monitoring and evaluation and menstrual health and hygiene. Since the first meeting in the Philippines in 2012, the event has developed from one that is initiated and managed by UNICEF and GIZ to an established format involving high-level governmental representation organized by host countries, thus allowing valuable government-to-government exchange. Country consultations and field trips to schools, together with informal interactions during breaks and even the bus rides to school visits, were the valued opportunities for exchanges among the delegations. The most recent Joint Monitoring Program report suggests that there have been marked improvements on WINS in countries that have either hosted or joined the ILE. In 2023, the first WINS ILE took place in Africa and brought together government representatives and their key WASH in Schools partners from development agencies, NGOs, and INGOs from a total of 26 African countries. Huge interest from countries and the success of the first African ILE provides a foundation to build on the ILE movement in Africa and spur progress on WINS. The partnerships formed and the success stories gained from the last 11 years of the ILE are a testament that the approach works and contributes to WINS implementation and the attainment of the SDGs for WINS. Given that many countries are not on track to reach the WINS-related indicators under SDG 4 and 6, formats like the WINS ILE are crucial to learn from each other and to accelerate progress towards ensuring that all schools and children have universal access to basic WASH services. With partner alignment, the ILE is an important tool that promotes the education sector's leadership, policy, planning, monitoring, advocacy, and research, which are the foundation to generate political will and for strengthening the enabling environment for WINS.
Excellent. I hope this video gave you a really good overview of what is ILE, and also you might have seen how interactive the fun looks like to be part of this ILE event. Now we're moving on to the virtual that bus ride exchange on the ILE. First, I'd like to introduce Christy Shapley from Joint Monitoring Program. She's an associate professor of engineering at the Fort Lewis College and a WASH consultant. She has been working on the WASH monitoring since 2009, with a particular focus on the WASH in school. And then she has been working with WHO UNICEF Joint Monitoring Program, JMP, since 2016. Unfortunately, she could not join on live this session, so this is a pre-recording from her about the joint monitoring perspective on ILE.
Hi, thank you for including me in this session on WASH in schools. I'll be presenting on behalf of the JMP on whether or not we're on track to meet the SDGs for WASH in schools. So on the next slide, there's a quick overview. We'll look at what proportion of schools have basic WASH services as of 2021, our last year of estimate. We'll see if countries are on track to meet the SDGs by 2030, and then we'll briefly discuss how countries can improve WASH in schools monitoring so that we can try and increase those rates of progress. Today's presentation is similar to presentations that the JMP has shared at many of the WASH in schools international learning exchanges. The international learning exchanges have really provided a platform to regularly share harmonized global data updates with country delegations, including ministries of education and other line ministries. This data sharing has supported a common understanding between participants of the importance of data and progress tracking. It served as a reminder of the common goal that we're striving for with the SDGs. And it's hopefully providing a foundation that is rooted in data for countries to share lessons on how we can act on what we're learning from the data so that we can reach that goal of the SDGs and beyond. So a quick reminder here, WASH in schools is included in SDG 6.1 and 6.2 under universal access to WASH. It's also explicitly included in Target 4A, where the indicator is the proportion of schools with their 7 different services, the last 3 of which are basic drinking water, single-sex basic sanitation facilities, and basic hand-washing facilities. And the language in the SDGs says as per WASH indicator definitions. And what that is referring to is what you see in the blue, green, and purple blocks below. So drinking water from an improved source with water available at the school. For sanitation, there are improved facilities that are single-sex and usable. They're available, functional, and private. And for hygiene, there are hand-washing facilities with water and soap available. The JMP uses service ladders to track progressive realization to basic service. So in yellow, you see a limited service. This basically means that there are improved infrastructure available, but there are elements of basic service that are not being met. And then in orange, you see no service, which means there's not improved infrastructure or there's no infrastructure at all. Or in the case of hand washing, there are no facilities or no water available for hand washing. So the JMP collects national data from existing data sources so that we can track global, regional, and national progress towards those SDGs. And we're responsible for tracking progress of the SDGs that are related to WASH. As part of that, we've developed methods for global monitoring of WASH in schools, and we produce updated estimates every 2 years. So our last report came out last year in 2022, and that had just over 1,000 national data sources, which you can see was an increase from previous reports that came out. And many of these are coming from national systems such as the Education Management Information System, or EMIS. And what these data show is that 71% of schools had basic drinking water service in 2021, and we see variation between regions, as you can see on the screen. In addition to the countries that are within those regions, we're seeing variation. For sanitation, 72% of schools globally had basic service. And again, we see a wide variation between countries and regions. And then hygiene is the lowest coverage at 58% as of 2021. And here we really see a wide range of coverage between regions, as you can see, from 18% in Oceania up to 100% in Australia and New Zealand, and a similar wide variation between countries within some of those regions. So are we on target to meet the SDGs for WASH in schools? Currently, no. We're really progressing quite slowly for drinking water. We would need to increase current rates of progress 14 times to meet the SDGs by 2030. For sanitation, we would need to increase the rate of progress 3 times. And for hygiene, even though we're increasing faster, we're starting so much lower, and we need to increase the current rate of progress 5 times to meet the SDGs. Something interesting, though, is if we look at trends in reaching basic service in schools for the countries who have hosted and or participated in at least 6 international learning exchanges, we do see that progress for those countries is often faster than the global average. And for sanitation, India and the Philippines are actually on track to meet the SDGs for basic sanitation in schools. And hygiene, we're really seeing rapid improvement in a number of countries, many of which are much faster than the global average. And Cambodia is currently on track to meet the SDGs for hygiene in schools. You can dig into the data in much more detail by downloading country files from the JMP website, washdata.org/data/downloads. And here you can see all the different data sources that went into the estimates, as well as progress for individual countries. So the next thing that I wanted to highlight is how can countries improve monitoring to support increased rates of progress towards the SDGs, and what are countries already doing? I'd say the first thing is to integrate the 7 globally recommended core questions into an existing national system, such as the Education Management Information System. Papua New Guinea has done this. They actually were able to use 6 questions, but still answer all of the indicators for basic service. And many other countries have integrated these questions into their national system. The next thing I would say is to include some advanced questions if that's appropriate. We know that basic service alone doesn't meet all of the criteria of children's right to education and human rights to water and sanitation. So some countries may choose to track or monitor things beyond basic service. For example, in the Philippines, there are questions on menstrual health, and in Cambodia, there are questions on disability accessible toilets. Then actually analyzing the data is a really important step that I think often gets forgotten. Data tend to sit on servers and they're collected, but they're not always analyzed, especially analyzed looking at disaggregation that can support inequalities tracking, such as disaggregating by urban and rural schools, by pre-primary, primary, and secondary schools, and by subnational regions. And then lastly, I'd highlight the importance of reporting data at different levels so that we're actually informing action. And a good example of this, I think, is Indonesia's online dashboard. There's a number of countries that have some really great open source access to WASH in Schools data online. These resources can be downloaded at the JMP website. Here is the report from last year. We have a methodology document that goes through the methods we use for WASH in Schools. The core questions and a menu of some advanced questions can be found in this third document, and those are also included in a copy-paste format in Excel, in addition to some tabs that can be imported into Kobo Toolbox. So just to wrap up, some countries don't have enough data to track progress on WASH in Schools, but based on the countries that do, we're not currently on track globally to meet the SDGs, but there are a number of positive examples of countries increasing their rates of progress, a few that are actually on track, and a number of examples of how countries are improving monitoring to support this increase in progress. The ILE has really provided a platform to regularly share data updates and to stimulate cross-country dialogue so that we can use that information to improve progress and reach those SDGs. So a quick plug for what the JMP is doing next. We have a report coming out next year, the next data report. So if we are missing national data on WASH in Schools for your country, please email us at info@washdata.org. And we're hoping to do a special focus on menstrual health in schools if we can find enough national data. So if you have national menstrual health in schools data to share, please email us. We would love to highlight that as a positive example in the report. Thank you so much. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. And I know Tom Slaymaker is there to answer questions in person. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the conference.
Thank you, Christy. And then, yeah, her message is very clear. If you don't monitor it, you can't improve it. And then also, ILE really serves as really a benchmarking of these trends and also how people monitor, how different countries monitor across different countries in the regions. And also, I really caught that, the message also that the data and the progress or trends then also leads to the more deep dive into discussion of why is it working or it's not working, and at ILE, that kind of discussion of how to then replicate or try out in my country what's working in my neighboring country, or what are the challenges that you would help to address in my country. That kind of a discussion is really helpful, and then enhance exchanges. As she said in the later on in panel discussion, Tom Slaymaker, who's been already very active on the teams to share interesting, useful data and resources to answer your questions. But now we shall move to Nicole from UNICEF South Asia on the review conducted on how effective and useful the ILE has been over the last 10 years. Nicole, apologies, I cannot pronounce your name properly. Nicole Matsune, and she is a regional WASH specialist for UNICEF Regional Office for South Asia, ROSA. She's been working in both humanitarian and international collaboration settings, including private sector, UN, and also non-profit experience in global settings. So, fun fact that I have been forgetting actually to share from each presenter. Fun fact of Nicole is that she loves to travel and aims to have seen 100 countries. And so far, she has done 71 countries. Well, many more to come soon, but the pass over to you about this review on ILE.
Thank you very much, Maya. If you can just quickly confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody to the session. Next slide, please. We were hoping to hear a little bit from you as well. The ILE, or the challenge of an evaluation of an ILE, is that it's a very large, very varied event, which has been taking place since 2012 up to 2022. There were 9 WINS ILEs involving 25 countries that have taken place in South and East Asia and Pacific countries. So it's quite a complex learning event to evaluate. So we would like to hear from you as well, and please put your answers in that chat. How would you evaluate? What would be key for you to understand a learning event like the ILE? Next slide, please. Thank you. Why did we want to do the evaluation? Well, coming up on the 10th Washington Schools ILE that is planned for next year, so we wanted to collect the evidence to make sure that our meetings are meeting their goals and aims, that we have strong evidence to continue going, just not just for the sake of it, but really doing so efficiently as well as impactful, and then be able to course correct and adapt future events based on those learnings if necessary. There were interviews with 25 key informants held in 12 different sessions, and we got a couple of more written responses. We used questionnaires and so on. And then an analysis of the report was done by the study team together with the UNICEF regional teams. We provided the findings, the first findings, to a group of key informants who then were yet again able to kind of inform the final report that will be widely released soon. Next slide, please. Our research questions really evolved around impact as well as efficiency and the way the ILE was monitored and implemented. So we wanted to understand to which extent the ILE generated momentum and specifically political commitment, how it facilitated learning amongst those that were participating in person as well as virtual, how relevant the topics were that were presented, and how effective the structure was. Next slide, please. So the impact was supposed to show how the WINS ILE generated political will and political momentum, and how what we found is that the ILE is really catalytic to foster, facilitate, and align efforts and strengthen the enabling environment for WASH in schools. Next slide. Enabling environment matrices, which are filled out every year ahead of the ILE through technical working groups, have found really great positive changes in WASH in schools that are also mirrored in the data that is presented in the JMP. So, for example, Cambodia reported yellow for the absence of national WASH in schools policies for 2 years in a row. and then moved to green because there was a momentum generated within the country. I think specifically strong is the evidence on the three-story approach that was adopted by a couple of countries after they participated in the ILE. The wash in schools inclusion, or the inclusion of wash in schools questions into education, into EMISs, into education multiple indicator surveys, that policies were instituted, that dedicated budgets for school infrastructure as well as operation and maintenance was created, and that there was in some countries targeted investment in capacity buildings to support wash in school targets. Next slide, please. The ILE topics have really evolved from kind of project-related topics to wider thematic areas for government-led approaches. For example, the first WINS ILE promoted the Fit for School approach under the GIZ. The first ones, multiple ones, specifically focused on the opportunities and the implementation of the three-star approach by national governments, as well as the integration of wash in schools into national systems. And then later ILEs kind of broadened the topics to include more systematic and system strengthening topics such as WINS research, operation and maintenance, sustainability, climate resilience, financing, and environment. Next slide, please. We can see that, and this is a slide that quotes a little bit from the key informant interviews. Areas of the least progress in the enabling environment normally also mirror areas that were discussed in the ILE. So previous ILEs have a habit of informing future ILEs through this evaluation of the enabling environment metrics. Then, as you can see, or as I mentioned previously, WASH financing has been featured in 2 out of 4 last ILEs assessed, and we can see really that within the enabling environment matrices, as well as in global and national policies, WASH in schools financing is evolving quite strongly. Next slide. We wanted to also see how effective the WASH in the WINS ILE structure is and how it can be improved to really accelerate learning. Next slide. And as always, when it comes to key informant interviews as well as limited information provision, some comments can be quite subjective. But I think what we really found strongly coming out is that the key informant interviews reported meaningful learnings from the ILE. Country consultation, the technical sessions offered great opportunities to interact and to learn, and also to bond with each other in joint learning and the joint realization of where a country is over similar wash in schools issues. Small island states learning from each other, as we're talking about East Asia and Pacific, as well as South Asia, and both have very similar larger as well as smaller countries, humanitarian and development contexts. The field visits, and this is really where the title of this session comes, the field visits came out as one of the more participatory two-way communication activities that were very much appreciated. Even though they're timely, even though some colleagues said that they were quite tired at the end of the day, they encouraged informal interaction. They encouraged this informal learning amongst the participants during the bus rides, during the school visits. It was kind of a non-hierarchical learning because you would be able to talk to the person next to you on the bus. Two-way learning, therefore, is definitely also preferred, but featured a little bit less in the more recent and virtual, due to the COVID pandemic, due to the virtual format, the one-way communication in terms of presenting webinars and then opening up for smaller discussions has been featured more, and those were a little bit less appreciated. Consistent participation is really one of the strong indicators that there is a high relevance of the Washington Schools ILE. We had over 20 ministries of education that participated in the in-person ILEs at varying times, and which gave testimony that it was of value and of interest to them. On the continuity of the ILE, the peer motivation, the healthy competition between countries were cited as some of the reasons for generating a momentum for Washington Schools. As I mentioned before, the in-person was reported as more engaging and more valued over the virtual ILEs. Next slide, please. In summary, WINS ILEs are really hard to measure because of their large, varied kind of ways of how they were implemented, but they are really able to highlight and emphasize the importance of Washington Schools across ministries and different sectors, and the informal aspects of them are key to the impact on participants. It's where the alignment happens. It's where we learn to speak the same language with colleagues from different sectors like education, like health. And this includes really the alignment between different government ministries, as well as the alignment between various partners that were implementing and that were part of the ILE, donors, and so on and so forth. Next slide. A couple of key numbers that have been presented in the video already, but just kind of to remind you, we had over 1,000 in-person participants over the last 9 ILEs. Next. There were over 100 speakers with gender parity almost reached or just barely missing it. Next. And then there were over 1,000 sessions on really what I would call all of the WASH topics, ranging, as I mentioned, from like more project-based to more systems-based learning over recent years. That's it. I'm happy to, next slide, answer any questions. Please feel free to email after the session or reach out during our Q&A right now. Thank you. Over to you, Maya.
Thank you very much, Nicole, and keeping on time. It's really provided a really great overview and so that this kind of assessment is important for that adaptive management and then keep the initiative fit for purpose. Now, quickly move on to the next presenter and hear the perspective from the government who leads the WASH initiatives in countries and the main participants from the ILE. I'd like to introduce Ms. Malalo Mulundika, Director of School Health and Nutrition in the Ministry of Education in Zambia. Ms. Malalo has also worked for other government institutions, including the Ministry of Gender, the Teaching Service Commission, Public Service Management Division, and Cabinet offices. She had worked over 29 years in civil service. Over to you, Ms. Malalo, for your presentation.
Hello and greetings from Lusaka, Zambia. I am Malalo Mulundika, Director, School Health and Nutrition in the Ministry of Education, and I am going to present a brief overview of WINS and our experiences in Ivory Coast at the ILE. I'll start with a brief background. A survey was done by the Ministry of Education in Zambia, and the results it showed were that around 43% of the schools had adequate sanitation facilities for girls and boys, while more than 24% of schools were not provided with safe water supplies. This survey was done in 2009, and it also showed that hand washing facilities were few and non-existent. And as a result, we had poor hand washing practices and other unhygienic practices in schools, which were a big threat to health and performance. Ministry, because of the various results we got from the survey, the ministry has put a number of documents in place, an operating framework, and this gives guidance to stakeholders in WINS. And these documents include the school health and nutrition guidelines, and we also have the water and sanitation and hygiene in schools strategy, and we also have a national standards and guidelines. We also have a menstrual hygiene management and national guidelines and toolkit, and the school-led total sanitation guidelines and training manual. And lastly, we have the COVID-19 guidelines for schools. The ministry also works closely with other ministries in government, and our lead ministry in water and sanitation is Ministry of Water Development, so we depend on them for any policy issues and guidance. We also work very closely with Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, and they always monitor water quality. We also work with Ministry of Health. They also monitor wash facilities and also water quality in our schools. And another implementation arrangement is the Water Schools Coordination quarterly meeting, which we have with support from UNICEF. We have an education management information system, and we are very happy to note that we have a number of indicators on WASH in this MS. And key amongst them, I'll just highlight a few, is we collect information, number of schools which offer menstrual hygiene education, number of schools which have facilities for disposal of used sanitary towels. Another one is number of schools which provide soap or ash for hand washing. We also work, apart from working with government ministries, we also work with development partners, and key amongst these are UNICEF, GIZ, United Nations United Nations Population Fund, WaterAid, World Vision, SNV, and ADRA, which is a faith-based organization. As Zambia, we participated as multi-sectoral delegations. We had representation from Ministry of Education, Ministry of Technology and Science, TEVETA, which is Technical Education Vocational Training Authority, and the Lusaka Water Security Initiative, and GIZ. So these were the delegates that represented Zambia in Ivory Coast. And as part of our preparations for Ivory Coast, we filled in the matrix, the EE matrix together. And one of the highlights was lack of funding towards WINS as a most significant barrier. The team also put together a video which really highlighted activities that happened during COVID-19, especially activities and contributions from different stakeholders to the schools, the various schools in the country. And lastly, as a takeaway from the ILE event, Zambia really appreciated learning more about the 3-star approach. And we also learned lessons in menstrual hygiene, like the reusable period pants. And coming back, we have seen a strengthening of the WINS Technical Working Group, which the Ministry of Education coordinates. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Now quickly move on to the discussion with the 4 panelists. Over to you, Belinda, as a moderator.
Hello. So I am, for those who are, I'm just going to have to switch my audio. Thank you. Yeah, apologies. I need to switch my audio and for the French, those who are following the French slides, we are now just going to focus on the English slides, but I'm sure you can hear us. So thank you very much. I want to thank again Christy and Nicole and Malalu, which hopefully you are now on, and Bella is here with me. We are at Stockholm World Water Week, and it's been a great week, and I'm glad for those who are joining us today that you are also getting to participate. So let me just get into a few questions. I would wanted to just check the box first to see if we have any questions on the chat box first. Apologies, because I was showing the slides, so I'm missing. So if you have any questions on any of the presentations, please put them on the chat. In the interim, Tom, you're with us, right? Tom Slaymaker, Joint Monitoring Program. Tom, are you with us? Don't hear Tom. Malalu, are you with us? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Hi, Malalu.
I'm here.
Great. Thank you for an excellent presentation. I had a couple questions for you, and just a little bit to kind of understand from your experience. Okay, so just to start, let me go back a little bit. The theme of this World Water Week is Seeds of Innovation, and it's talking about different types of innovation. And I like to think that the ILE in some way is a social innovation. From your experience in Zambia, how do you see the ILE to be a tool for potentially, for example, donor alignment? We talked about that a little bit in the presentation from Nicole, and as well. What do you see that? How, in your opinion, how important is it for donor alignment using tools like the ILE?
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Bonjour, tout le monde. The ILE from our experience is a very, very important platform because bringing different stakeholders in one space and sharing experiences actually enhances learning. And I think this definitely goes a long way in helping align all the activities and programs that donors may be involved in. For instance, we learned when we were in Ivory Coast, we saw how different countries implement the WASH programs in slightly different manner. And it was good to see that and learn from that. So I'd like to believe different donors, different development partners have different approaches to WASH, especially in schools. So this platform really, really helps coordinate those efforts. So for us, me personally, I think it's a very, very important tool. ILE is a very, very important tool in aligning donor support and coordinating their programs.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think, Nicole, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Great. And thank you again for a wonderful presentation, giving us not only a background, but the nice evaluation of the ILE. And you pulled out also some points as well on this issue around donor alignment and partnerships and so forth. Giving you this basically the same question: how important from a development partner's perspective do you see the ILE?
From a development partner's perspective, I mean, specifically, speaking specifically as UNICEF, right? As where we understand ourselves and where our mandate is to be a bridge between the general population, working through and with government and implementing partners. The ILE is obviously a great opportunity to get all of those together. All of those aligned, getting them to speak the same language. We all know that in the development sector, we sometimes have a habit of being a little bit pillar oriented and meaningful cross-sectoral programming is really hard to achieve, specifically when you have multiple ministries to coordinate with, right? So having an opportunity to bring a Minister of Finance, a Minister of Education, a Minister of Water and Sanitation, and maybe a Minister of Health, which have typically been those that have been present at past ILEs, together for a couple of days to think about an issue that is so cross-sectoral that sometimes it isn't taken into account by anyone properly, right? Too many owners, no one really responsible. It's a great opportunity, and I think this is one of the outcomes of this evaluation, that it's an opportunity to educate donors. It's an opportunity to educate education counterparts about the importance of WASH, as well as WASH partners about the opportunities that are in digital education programming. How can we anchor WASH messaging, social behavior change into digital education, right? It's a multi-way street for learning. Sharing of like stories of impact, engaging in this dialogue and really building those relationships after having spent a week together talking about one specific topic, and then going home with this renewed energy that you often have when you come out of conferences. I'm sure you're experiencing it right now in Stockholm, right? Those are great opportunities, and I think the ILE was really able to harvest through multiple spin-off events in different countries, as well as real tangible political commitment and programming going forward.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you summed it up. It is really a seed of innovation, social innovation in a sense, when people get that kind of inspiration to want to do something and connect with each other. So really like that. Okay, so I think when we'll have maybe probably looking at the time, we have probably one last question, is it? Okay, so I'm trying to be cute here. Okay, so maybe we can continue, and we'll it'll nicely slide to you, Bella, but I'm going to start with Malalu first. The whole topic of this session was side talks and bus rides, and the idea being that these are the informal way in which people connect and engage with each other. So Malalu, again, in your opinion, how important was it that your ministry was able to connect with other ministries, or even in other countries on WINS? And what was your experience with that in the last ILE? If you could just take a few minutes to share.
Thank you very much. For us as Ministry of Education, in the recent past, we've seen the importance of interacting with other ministries. It's a given that we work closely with Ministry of Water Development in Zambia, because they're the lead in terms of all policy to do with water and sanitation. And we also work closely with Ministry of Health, Ministry of Local Government. And with time, we have seen that it's important to work as a team, and much as we are siloed, as was mentioned earlier on, it's very important to work together because we all have something to offer in the WINS, the WASH in Schools space. For instance, if water development has a policy and they want to get quick results in terms of implementation, when they implement that in schools, they actually cover a large population, because our learners are in school most of the time. It's a large population. For instance, in Zambia, I think it's about a quarter of the Zambian population. So it means that intervention is already covering a quarter of the Zambian population. Behavior change issues in terms of water and sanitation. If you teach our learners in the schools, whether it's Ministry of Health, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Water, it means you're making an impact on 1/4 of the Zambian population. And our experience in Ivory Coast, it was wonderful to interact and see the experiences of other countries, the best practices, and also the challenges, because sometimes when you're working and things are not happening as they should, it can be very discouraging. But when you see that other countries may have similar challenges, it's good to see that, oh, okay, we are not the only ones, and there's hope and there's light at the end of the tunnel. For us, we're big on menstrual hygiene. it was so good to see the best practices from other countries like Niger. We were really impressed with their sanitary towels. So we learned a lot, even from the country profiles. I can mention a whole list. It was so good to see what other countries are doing. So for me, ILE was the best. Thank you.
Oh, Malalu, excellent. You couldn't wrap it up better. Thank you so much. So now moving on, and thank you for excellent presentation. So I think we can go straight on to our closing remarks from Bella Mons. Bella is a senior advisor. Maybe we can just go on to the next slide. So Bella is a senior advisor in supporting the Fit for Schools program. Bella, I'm going to kind of, as you go into because you're sitting right next to me, which is so nice. I'm gonna let you move on to side talks, bus rides, and side talks. What are you thinking? And if you can close us off here, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Can you see me or hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot. I think I cannot say it better than Malalu already put it all together, what really the experience of these sort of events is. Specifically, you can have a lot of informal exchange, which is so valuable, because to really and go to schools and discuss with other stakeholders, to see is to believe. And it's different from just learning it from books or online sessions. So I really hope we could keep this spirit, which Malalu captured so nicely, and also from the development partners perspective. Nicole also very clearly explained it, and I cannot do more. I cannot highlight it better than they have done. There are no better words to find. I can share exactly the same experience from meeting each other, sharing experience, but also have a structure behind, like the enabling environment which we are using, which also supports countries in their own progress and in their own process of moving the topic of WASH in schools in their government. I think all this has played very well together. These are all parts of a puzzle of a bigger picture, and I think that worked out very well. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you also Belinda for hosting very nicely, thanking the audience, thanking Belinda for moderating, but also Maya. I think you guided us very nicely through the entire event, and also Fred and March, who supported the session from the WINS network, and we're very happy the WINS network is keeping these events together. And thanks everyone, and looking forward to meet again, and hoping that we can keep this format alive. For everyone in the session, you will be able to access the presentations and the recording on the WINS network. And please join the WINS network, connect with each other, also in the hope to see each other and move the topic of WASH in schools forward, learning on country level, but also exchange between countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining this session. Hope to see you soon in person and online. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah. Thank you, Maya. You rock.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.